I want to start by saying that unboxing this would have been a piece of cake with 2 people. You could actually just lift it straight off of the planer, but by myself it was just binding and I couldn't quite get it over the top by myself, so I just popped the tops and the sides off. They just use a bunch of nails and a couple screws to hold it all together. They ship the planer with several boxes inside the cabinet of the stand, so just pop off those Allen screws and you can access those boxes. So in the instructions they had 3 sheets of some changes that have been made since the manual is printed out. One of them, it tells you have to lift off that panel that I removed with all those Allen screws because there's 3 boxes inside of there. So make sure you look in there before you think you've got missing parts. Another one which I didn't know about but I'm happy about is the outfeed rollers used to be metal and now they're rubber. And it was like a serrated steel, and I remember watching a video and somebody saying that outfeed roller was kind of gouging their material. So I think rubber is actually going to be a lot better and it's going to give us a lot cleaner finish. And then it also says they have different carbide cutters in the helical head than they had previously. But just wanted to share those with you. With this model, they've revised a few things and they just give you a few handouts that tell you about what those are. I also wanted to point these out. I don't have a forklift here, but if you did, that's what these steel bars are for. They slide in and out, so you can slide them out on both sides and then you can lift it up with a forklift. I'd recommend you doing that versus trying to lift it off. It was kind of tricky to get it off the pallet by itself. I believe this is in the neighborhood of 650 pounds. So just be aware of that if you do order it. But I'm going to get the pivoting wheel assembled right away and then I can kind of move it roughly to where I think I want it in my shop. The bolt that goes through for the foot pedal on this is held on by an E-clamp, and I just use a flathead screwdriver to kind of pop that out and then it'll snap back into place just like the snap ring would, and that just keeps that bolt retained in that bracket.
I've mentioned it a couple times during this video, but there is literally grease all over this machine. I just use WD-40 to clean it off. Be extremely careful when you're cleaning off the table because those carbide blades are right above my hand there. So drop the table as far down as you can and just use caution when cleaning off the grease.
Alright, and now on the back side you're going to use just a regular hex bolt and a lock washer and a flat washer. I think I forgot to mention on the front side you also use the lock washers as well. And then there's going to be 3 bolts back here and then 2 set screws as well. I've got the first 2 in just like before and I'm about to put the 3rd one in. And just like on the back side, the front here, you use those same hex bolts, a lock washer and a flat washer, and keep everything just a little bit overhand tightened right now. We still have to flatten all these out and make sure everything is completely parallel to reduce some snipe issues that is normally caused when your in-feed and out-feed tables are not completely flat all the way across. So I'm going to get these last couple in the front here and then I'll focus on leveling everything off so that everything is perfectly parallel. Alright, now that I have the front and the back tables lightly tightened down, I'm going to take a straight edge. In this case I'm just going to use a square, and I drop the table all the way down so I have a little bit more room to see and work here. What you don't want to do is run a long straight edge all the way through and contact these rollers on the bottom here, because that's not what you want to reference off of. You just want to reference off of the base table there. So if you have a partner for this, I think it would go 10 times faster and a lot easier. Somebody that could kind of hold it up for you and then you could tighten the wrench down. I'm going to try and do this by myself and we'll see how it goes. I'm not quite sure how well you can see that, but there's a lot of wiggle room here in my flat edge. And basically what has to happen is my outfeed table needs to tilt up a little bit. So take the Allen wrench that they included in one of their little bundles, and those set screws that we set underneath here are designed so that you can kind of assist in your leveling process here. So I'm going to start tightening that set screw, and did you see how much that moved with just a little bit of a turn there? I might have even gone too far, but you can use those set screws to help you kind of fine-tune your leveling process. There we go. That brought it up really close to level on this edge at least. Of course I got to go all the way across, but just kind of slowly use those set screws, and when you get everything nice and flush, then you tighten down those hex bolts. So I think that's a pretty great feature that they included, and with the first one it's working pretty well, so I'm going to keep plucking away. So using a straight edge is helpful for this, and that's what I did to get it pretty darn close to being completely parallel and flat. And then once I snugged them up a little bit further, I just started running my finger across, and I feel like that's an even better method to make sure you're perfectly flat across there. If you feel any sort of ridge, you can, counter to that and then tighten everything down. So this one I got flattened and completely locked into place. Now I just have to get the front side finished up, and then I'm going to mount the dust collection hood, and I think that that's going to be the last thing that I have to do before I can fire it up. On to the dust collection hood, but how I'm assuming this goes on there is there's these 2 flanges on each edge of your dust collector, and they can they're slotted so you can bend them in or out, and I'm going to bend mine out. It just makes more sense to me to have them on the outside so no dust and stuff gets clogged up on them on the inside. And then somehow I'm going to have to thread a bolt and nut from underneath. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to do that yet, but I'll let you know if I find a way that works well or not. But how this works is you open up those flanges that I talked about, See if I can give you a good shot. It won't focus, of course, but right here, this piece, you can kind of pull it out, and then it just slips over this collar here. And it fits fine. It's just a matter of running 3 nuts and bolts and getting a nut on them when the whole bottom of this thing is completely encased. So I'm not sure how I'm gonna do this, but I'll let you know if I figure it out. All right, so I guess you gotta reach your hand into that dust collection outlet there. So good luck if you have bigger hands or arms. I can't believe that that's the best thing they could think of for mounting that hardware. On the bottom side, they just have threaded bolts, which makes sense. Why not find a way to do that on the top or come up with something a little bit more user-friendly? But I'm able to make it work. I hope you guys are able to make it work as well. I'm gonna get those last 2 in, and then I'll put 3 threaded bolts in on the bottom. Then we're good to go. Alright guys, I got everything completely assembled. I wheeled it over here to plug it in and fire it up. It starts and runs good. I will say that it's a lot quieter than I expected, which is good. And I'm just going to kind of run through some of the first impressions, what I think I'm going to like and what I'm not a huge fan of right out of the box. And then I'm going to run it for at least a couple months, and then maybe I'll do a follow-up review on how it's performing. But a couple things that I don't like to start with is the swiveling leg or the swiveling wheel on the front that it comes with. If your shop floor isn't 100% level and clean, that thing just drops on you when you're moving it. My shop floor, it's old concrete, probably 60, 70-year-old concrete, and there's cracks, and then I've got dust and wood chunks all over here, and just rolling it the 10 feet from where I was putting it together to here, that leg collapsed like 3 or 4 times, and I almost had to just keep my foot on the pedal to keep the wheel engaged the whole way through. So I'm not real impressed with that wheel. I'm hoping to rearrange the shop and get this set up to where I don't really have to wheel it around at all. It'll be kind of a stationary tool for me. So that's not a game changer for me, but another negative that I would say is one of the largest negatives for me is there is grease everywhere on this thing. I think I mentioned it before. I probably took 15 minutes or so with my solvent and a rag cleaning everything up, and then I started it and it just flung grease everywhere again, and I looked underneath. All the rollers, everything is just covered in grease after it ran for probably 5 or 6 seconds. So I'm going to probably open it up completely and just scrub everything down, because I can't be getting grease on, you know, finished material for my projects. So I don't really, like, I understand, you know, putting the grease on the in-feed, out-feed tables, protect those, but they literally showered everything with grease. It's a huge mess, and it's kind of a nuisance in my opinion. I understand why they have to use some grease, but I think they went way overboard with it. I do love that this thing has a 9-inch capacity for the thickness, and the wheel that comes with this spins really smooth. There's no catches, and it's really easy to move up and down. So I'm looking forward to having that ability to run something that is potentially 9 inches through it. I don't know if I ever will, but it's nice to know that it's able to do that. And then this is the 15-inch model, so that's going to give me a little bit more clearance to run through it that way, and it does have the helical head, so I'm super excited for that as well. Those are all going to be the great features. The in-feed and out-feed tables I really like as well, because they're all solid. Some of these thickness planers come with rollers, and I much prefer having the solid cast in-feed, out-feed tables. I feel like it gets flatter, and it's a lot more stable. And I run a lot of long material through my jointer and planer, so having a solid in-feed out-feed table is definitely a plus. The machine itself is very heavy, and I feel like it's put together pretty darn well. I don't see anything that looks like it's fragile or that it might become an issue with use over time. It looks like it's built pretty darn sturdy, so I'm pretty impressed with that. I believe this on-off switch, it just ships that way and I just have to move it out. But I'm not a big fan of that switch either. It feels kind of cheap to me. And I'll actually move the camera and show you the switch that they put on the jointer that I just got. I really like that on-off switch. I'm not so much a fan of this one, but I mean, it does what it needs to do. I just have to move that one over. I love having these rollers on top. I do a lot of work in here all by myself, so if I'm running 10-inch 2x material through it, I can feed it through, catch it, and then roll it across, and grab it on the other side. So it definitely helps if you don't have that extra set of hands in the shop. I dig the color. It's kind of a cosmetic thing, but I really like the green and this kind of off-white color. Both of mine kind of match each other. And that Grizzly logo at the bottom just looks awesome. I think it's one of the best logos in the game. The motor seems strong. I'm going to, like I said, clean it up a little bit more on the inside and then run some test pieces through it, and I'll show you the results on those. But I just wanted to give you a few, initial thoughts, pros and cons of what I think of it right out of the gates. The goods definitely outweigh the bad. Some of the bads are kind of petty, but it's just my honest review, and I just wanted to show you what you can expect if you order one of these and what it's going to look like and what you're going to have to do straight out of the box. So I'm going to get this thing fired up and we'll run our first board through it. So this is the switch that's on my jointer. It has that oversized stop button that I really like. It just makes it super easy to turn off if maybe you got your hands full. And then over here, this is the style of switch on the planer. Start it, then stop it, and then you twist it and it pops out. I mean, it works just fine, but if I could pick, I would rather have the one that's on the jointer on this planer as well. Alright, I'm gonna run a piece of 2x8 pine through it to start. It's just a scrap piece that I had laying around. Like I mentioned earlier, this thing runs really quiet, and I thought that when it would actually start cutting, it would get a little bit louder, but it is very quiet, which I'm super impressed with. I've worked with DeWalt's before, and I can't run those ones without ear protection, and this one is surprisingly quiet. I'm going to turn my dust collector on and feed this through a couple times, and we'll see what kind of snipe we have and see if we have to do any adjustments on that end, and we'll also see how clean of a cut we get. Alright, so here's that piece of pine that we ran through a few times, and like I mentioned earlier, it runs so quiet and it runs so smooth. I know pine is not a super hard wood by any means, but it cuts through just like butter, and usually it shows the snipe very well. And there is a small line of snipe. You can kind of see that color change. It's not real evident there, you can see it pretty good, but it looks a lot worse than it actually is. There is, like, you can hardly even feel it to the touch. Compared to some of the snipe I've seen before, it's really minor. I might look in to see if I can adjust the outfeed roller or the drive roller and see if you can adjust the pressure on that at all. But I don't really know if it's even worth bothering on. That would sand out in a matter of seconds. So it cuts very well, it cuts very quiet. The dust collection from the first few cuts, I would say, out of a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give it probably a 7 or 8. It does get the majority of it, but there are still pieces of wood, on the table and around the planer. But all in all, I would say that it cuts very well, and I'm going to probably start running some hardwood through it later this week, so I'll put it to work right away. But I hope you enjoyed this quick unboxing and first impressions review of the Grizzly planer. It's a huge upgrade for me, and I'm excited to have it in the shop, and I can't wait to put it to some real work here later on this week and throughout the course of the summer. I hope that this was helpful for you, and if you like this video, please subscribe, and I will continue making tool updates and reviews along with show you how I build a lot of my projects. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next build.